a software developer for roughly over 15 years now. Currently being in charge as technology lead for the mobile experience at Lufthansa. So if you flew with Lufthansa to London as I did, chances are good that you use some of the services that me and my team are providing. So what am I going to talk about today? I'd like to start with a raise of hands. So who of you would say that you've made your hobby into your profession, or that you've selected your dream job? Okay, that's almost 100%. And now, who of you, let's say within the last 2 or 3 weeks, thought, what the hell am I doing in my job right now? Okay, that's almost 100% as well. And that's why I felt the need to create this talk. So it's a little bit, my colleague came up with that brilliant picture. So if any one of you has seen the Despicable Me 3 movie that came out, that's how I sometimes feel. So I'm one of the minions. I like to work for Gru. I like all the things that we do. And then suddenly he does something completely crazy and I just say, I quit. So, but the question is, how can we change that? So how can we make our lives better? How can we feel better with what we're doing and going on? So this is a collection of things that I experienced, a collection of things that my colleagues experienced, that my friends experienced, that I had discussions with them about. It's a collection of things that I heard at other conferences and then grouped together. Because what I sometimes had on conferences is that you had these great advice of saying, this is how you have to do development. This is how you have to behave in your project. Good example was then you must do agile development to feel good, which is a bold statement and which is also a problem, because if I'm in a project set up where I'm not allowed to do agile, that's nothing that I can start change tomorrow. So the title is how to become a happy developer now. So what I would like, or what I'm trying to achieve, is that to give you some patterns, some real-life patterns. I mean, we're all developers. We're all used to patterns. We're all used to seeing things are working here, so let's try if they work somewhere else. So I'm trying to give you a few patterns that you can immediately apply starting tomorrow to get away from that, what the hell am I doing here feeling. So the first thing that I've seen within myself and within others is the expectations versus reality feeling. So small story from my past. When I started at university, or before I started at university, I did some pre-courses to get up to speed, where we more or less did everything that I learned in school in math within 10 years reduced to 1 day. And I also did a course in C++ at the time. And the experience that I had, the room or the course was more or less room sized like this and more or less filled like this, so almost full. That was on Monday. Course was 1 week. And on Friday, I remember that maybe a quarter of people still were there. So 3/4 of the people just dropped out. And then the guy teaching us, he just came up laughing. Yeah, so looks like that a few of the people that were here on Monday are no longer here on Friday. And one of those came to me in my office and said, oh, well, your C++ course really seems nice, but I think I will stick with Excel. So what am I trying to say with this? Obviously, the expectation that he had was something different than the reality. On the other hand, he did exactly the right thing, which is quitting, because the expectation was obviously not learning C++, but doing something else. And that's already one part. So just acting on that. What's my expectation versus what's the reality? Another example is, unfortunately, a colleague of mine quite a few years back who told me, I'm a developer. I do not want to talk with the customer. Have someone else talk to the customer. Which I think most of us would agree is a bad idea, because if you have someone else talk to the customer and then talk to you what the customer told him, there's a lot of things that are getting lost in translation, literally. So if I'm a developer and I want to give my best and I want to have a good product output, I will have to talk to the customer to see, okay, what does he actually want? What's the idea behind that? So the question is, how do I see my job? What do I see as part of my job, and what do I see not as part of my job? So what am I looking for? Before giving the answer, I have to think, what do I want? So, and for me right now, I'm at Sapient Razorfish, which is an agency. So the typical work that we do is fast-paced, and it's changing from week to week, from month to month. So the things that I did last year are not the things that I'm doing now, and I'm pretty sure that the things that I'm doing now are not the things that I'm going to do next year, or maybe even next month. But again, if you are someone who does not enjoy this fast-paced movement, if you're someone who is more comfortable in a predictable way, in doing the same thing all over again, having a little bit of quietness, if you will, then an agency is not for you. Then you're maybe happy in an insurance company or whatever, where they're doing things the way they did them 20 years ago. But just make yourself aware of that. What are you looking for? Are you looking for a fast-paced scenario? Are you looking for something quieter? What do you want? And then act upon that. When I started my career, I switched companies quite often, so maximum two years, because I always thought, okay, somewhere else it's going to be better. Of course, not realizing, okay, what do I actually want? I don't like it here, but what am I looking for? So make yourself aware of that, and actually, I did it. Make a list. Have some 5 or 6 just bullet points, saying, okay, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm not looking for. Do I like to travel? Do I like to stay in one office? Whatever. And then check, okay, so what's the job? Does it match to what I want or not? And then most of you have said, yeah, I've made my hobby into my profession, into my career. And a very good sentence that one of my colleagues said when he saw the slide is, yeah, but if you've made your hobby into your profession, you need a new hobby. And why is that? Because doing software development, or especially doing software development for fun as a hobby at home, is something completely different than doing it for a living, than doing it professionally. And I've seen colleagues, and I had the experience that if you try to combine both, so software development is my profession, which I do from 9 to 5, and then software development is also my hobby, which I do from, 8 o'clock in the evening until my eyes can't stay open any longer. You have 2 problems, because you're mixing them up, and the idea of a hobby, the idea of something else is getting inspiration from somewhere else and not thinking about the things that you do every day or that you do during your workday, and just do something else. Get a fresh perspective, clear your mind, whatever. So, and it's actually frustrating if you see, okay, yesterday evening I did this great stuff at home where I could gold plate all my code and where I could add the last change that I always wanted to do, and tomorrow I'm back at this monolithic application that I just have to support for the next, 10, 20 years. It's getting different or difficult because I can't do what I want to do, and I can't do what I think is right, and so on. And then most of the developers that I talk to would agree to what I say. I became a developer to mainly talk to machines and not really talk to humans, because talking to machines is a lot easier than talking to humans. They just do what you tell them. But again, you're not operating in a vacuum. As a developer, you're not just developing, but you have to see who else is involved in what I'm actually doing. There's the project manager. Of course, there's the customer. There are my colleagues. There are my superiors. There's HR, whatever. It's a complex scenario what you have. And you need to know and understand your stakeholders. What do they want? What drives them? And what do they try to avoid, for example? So if you want to pitch something to your project manager, if you see, okay, that application that we have, we need to do a large refactoring, or we need to get some external framework or whatever, and you perfectly know that this is the right thing, but your project manager doesn't, or the customer or whoever has the money, they don't. So you need to find a way to communicate to them in their language. What are you trying to do and why are you trying to do this? For example, a project manager, if he hears, oh, my developers, they want to do a refactoring or they want to bring in some new framework, they just want their playground and they just want more time to play, which most of the time is not true. So why do we want a large refactoring? Why do we want to bring in another framework? Because we know that this makes our life easier, that we can get better results in a shorter amount of time, whatever. And we need to find a way to communicate that to the other stakeholders. So if I go to my project manager and say, okay, we need this new framework or we need this refactoring because we're going to get a better rate of delivering features, we're going to get a better code base, which means fewer bugs, which in your world means fewer complaints from the customer. We can concentrate on delivering new features. So it's for you, it's more, or it's less expensive because we are more performant in what we're actually doing. That's what he's going to understand. And that's where he will get the buy-in saying, oh yeah, the idea that you have is perfectly right, do that. Why haven't you done it last week? Or why haven't you started it last week? Whatever. But to be able to communicate that to the stakeholder, I need to know what drives him. Project managers, most of the time, they're driven by money. They want to make the most money in the shortest amount of time. With the customer, or with the client, it's something similar. If you tell them, hey, this is what we need to do because you will be able to have a better user experience or whatever, then he will start listening. And if you know that, okay, that person for which I'm working is primarily by, which I had, for example, by fear. They fear that if the application breaks, then they will get their bonus reduced or whatever. So then you can start planning with that, planning around that, whatever. And it makes your life a lot easier because these people will suddenly start to see you not only as the nagging developer, or they always want X, Y, and Z, but they will see you as their trusted partner. So yes, we want to work with him because I know that he can get things done for me or whatever. And they do have their reasons for being skeptic or whatever. One example that I had was quite a few years ago, we replaced an old host-based software, so this green on black stuff, with a new web UI. And then suddenly complaints came in from the users, which were only 10 at the time, so we knew all our users by name, which is quite nice. And they said, yeah, well, we don't see all the results. We can't see everything. And we said, yeah, why? And then we tested this, and we saw it, and yeah, perfectly fine, it works. They're stupid, they just can't use the stuff. And then somehow we got into a discussion of what they were actually trying to do. And in that old host-based application, they had 10 entries or what maximum. And if they wanted to see 10 more entries, they have to click on next page or whatever. Of course, in our new application, there was no next page because there is no page. There was a scroll bar that you can scroll down, and then you got to the next 10, 15, whatever entries. But they came from their 20, 30, 40-year-old software, and they were simply not familiar with the concept of a scroll bar. They had never seen that. So we just had to go there saying, yeah, okay, look here. You could just click here and scroll it down, and then you see everything. And then you saw their eyes opening. This is great. This is how it's working. That is more easy than the last stuff, and so on. So from this apathy, so they saw us as they're the stupid guys, and we saw them as they're the stupid users. So we came to, they make our lives easier, and we saw, okay, this is where they're coming from, this is how they are thinking, this is what we have to tell them to do, and so on. So you get from a almost warlike scenario to a partnership, just by understanding what is your stakeholder thinking, what are they motivated by. Of course, this implies implicitly that you have a clear communication, which is not only with the customer or with the project manager, but it's also a clear communication internally. So who of you knows a coworker or whatever who says, okay, I'm done. And who of you knows what he means when he say he's done? My team is roughly 10 to 15 people, and I'm pretty sure, or I know that everyone means something different when they say, I'm done. So just try to have a clear communication between you and your team on what you want to do, and then all these misunderstandings suddenly vanish, and life gets a little bit easier. It's a little bit like learning a foreign language. So if you're talking to a project manager as a developer, you're talking to them about forecasts and about margins and about revenue and whatever, which is not something that I would see as my core competence, but it's something that you have to learn in terms of clearly being able to communicate with someone else. And then if you say, yeah, but look, if we do this feature that way, or if we have that refactoring, then your margin will go up, or the revenue will increase, or whatever, then suddenly you're in a discussion and they're able to understand you. Next thing is, think about what kind of person, what kind of personality are you or do you have? Okay, we always know there are the introverts and there are the extroverts. And I would say that most of the developers are more on that introvert side, at least a lot of people that I know, and they're not really the extroverts. So make yourself aware of that. Am I someone who is loudly advocating for things that you do know to be right or that you want to do? Or are you someone who's not really comfortable in having that discussion? If you know that, if you see, okay, I know I'm an introvert, I know I don't like standing up to someone saying or disagreeing, saying something like this is not going to work or we need to do something else. If you know that, then you can work around that. You can either learn to get there or just get someone else. If you know I'm not comfortable in doing that, try getting a coworker who is, and just ask, hey, this is what I think, can you help me there? And this will make your life hopefully easier in just navigating through these situations. Of course, the ideal scenario, I'm sure most of you will have heard that, is the T-shaped scenario. So somewhere as developers, our expertise is development, is creating systems, is creating user experience, whatever. So there our knowledge is really in depth, we know everything. But then again, there is this upper level. So I'm happy with looking a little bit left of what I'm doing and looking a little bit right of what I'm doing. This also leads to better understanding, but this also will give you the possibility to better judge things that are coming your way. Getting back to the communication part, if I know how is project management working, what is their motivation, what are they going to do, it makes my life a lot easier because I can try getting there. Next thing, this is a little bit like making your hobby into your profession. Don't lose your focus. What are you actually trying to do? What are you doing when you're developing? So, nice thing found from XKCD is this is the idea that we have when we as developers see a problem and that we want to do something. So we start working on the task and we want to write something or we want to automate something. So we start on it, then we write some code, which is more effort than just doing it. But in the end, here, automation takes over and our life is getting easier. That's the theory. This is how it's going to work out in the real field. So we start writing code and then we're debugging, and then we're rethinking, and I can do something here and I can do something there and I can add this little function and that little function and so on, and suddenly you're ongoing. Your product or your small application, it will never be perfect because you will always find something that can be optimized. Oh, I can do this and I can do that and so on. So don't lose the focus of what you're actually trying to do. I know this is really hard, speaking as a perfectionist, at sometimes saying sometimes good is good enough. It does not have to be perfect. Especially when the customer is paying you for something. And he just says, okay, so this is enough. We've fulfilled the requirements. Of course, we could do A, B, C, D, and E, and would be even better. And try selling that. Yeah, but know when to quit. And sometimes good is good enough. Then what you have is the two sides. So you have this latest fancy stuff, having the most modern framework, having everything in there, having or being at the front using the latest version of whatever, where you can really fulfill your dreams of doing great new stuff. And then you have the legacy part. So you have software that's lying there for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I know what I'm speaking about. The software that I have is now roughly 10 years old, and it shows. So it's not really that you can say to someone joining the team or whoever, hey, we're doing that great new framework. No, we're still doing that old stuff that nobody wants to talk about anymore. So, and how do you see that? So the typical example is all these guys that are doing the latest fancy stuff. They're here at conferences and saying, hey, this is great, do it as well. And then you have the other one saying, so yeah, but I have that old system lying there, bull. And you're depressed almost. And the picture that is here is Cologne Cathedral, which is the church is almost, or I think, 1,000 years old. And if you will, and I've heard that, Cologne Cathedral is one of the largest legacy projects in Germany, because it exists for 1,000 years, and it still has to be supported. And actually, the cathedral works, they have 60 people, full-time employees, just taking care of this old church. Now, if you go to them and ask them, how do you feel about your job? I'm pretty sure none of these people is going to say, oh, I have to support this old church. It's really awful. I do not want to do that anymore. It's No, they are proud of what they're doing. They will tell you, yes, I'm very happy with doing that. I'm making sure that the church stays for another 1,000 years, that people are coming and seeing it, visiting it, and so on. And it's a little bit, or we can compare that to software. If you have that legacy project, it doesn't have to be that depressing. Most of these legacy projects, they are there for a reason. For example, I worked at a big insurance company. The oldest piece of source code that I saw was from, I think it was 1972 or something like that. That code is there, or that application is there for a reason. It does work, and it will continue to work. So being part of that can actually bring you joy, because you say, okay, I'm making sure that the money for pensions or whatever is still managed correctly, it's still working, it is doing an important job, and I'm part of that development team who makes sure that it continues to do that job. So, like the workers for the cathedral, I'm part of keeping something that is useful, that is needed, alive. And let's face it, most of the time we're working in IT, and most of the time IT is not on the front pages. It's not saying, oh, and that's the developer who implemented feature X, and that's the developer who did this and that. This picture is from the Apollo 11 moon mission. Someone might know that I'm a space geek. So, who knows that guy? Who knows the first man on the moon? I think everybody does. So, that's what I mean. You know that Neil Armstrong was the first man who walked on the moon. You do not know that this is Gene Kranz, who was responsible for managing mission control at that time. The whole mission, Apollo 11, would not be possible without the mission control team on the ground in Houston managing that. But hardly anyone knows that guy, but he had an important job. And it's a little bit like our life as a developer. We do have important jobs, at least I hope so, and at least I tell myself that. But most of the times, we're not the ones getting all the credit. We have a few awards for the Lufthansa app standing in our office, but it's most for that great user interface or that great design, whatever. And the guys who were accepting these awards few times we sent some developers there as well, but most of the times it was the account guys, it was the project managers, it was some of the UX team who was proud of what they're doing. But this would not have been possible without the development team. So, and there are two ways of handling that. So first of all, is just get used to it. You're working in IT, you're a support function, that's the way it is. And the second thing is just do some lobby work. I mean, try to convince or try to tell people, what did you actually do? Did you have a great, or did you solve a great problem? For example, what I can tell you from my experience at building the Lufthansa app is, as you can imagine, an airline has a lot of backend systems, also 40, 50 years old and so on. And one of the challenges is to orchestrate all these systems. So to get the information from that system and from that system and from that system, then orchestrate it and get a unified picture out to the customer. So you can write about that. You can say, okay, this is what we did. This is what the problem was. Very scattered IT landscape, a lot of systems that don't speak to each other, that don't know each other, and so on. And to create a good customer experience, this is what we had to do. We had to aggregate them, and then we had to have a layer in between, and so on. And you can write a story out of that. You can write a story out of that, publish it. Maybe you will not get on the big newspapers, but this is also something that you can be proud of and that you can publish and that you can tell everyone, hey, look, this was my part in it. This is what I did. Career management is the point where I say, think about your career. I know most of us developers, we don't really talk about our career. Career is for project management. Career is for account. Career is for other people. We just want to do great work and good work and so on. But think about, how do you want to progress as an individual? What do you want to do in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I don't know what I want to do in 10 years or in 20 years, but I have a rough idea of where's the journey going to. So just think about that and act upon that. Because if you do not actively plan your career, if you do not actively think about what do I want to do next, someone else will do that. Your project manager will, HR will, whatever. And then you're being managed, your career is being managed, instead of you managing your career proactively. Example that I have, a few years ago, my manager came to me saying, oh, Christian, you're now doing software development for 10 years, now it's time that you become a project manager. I said, no, this is not what, yeah, but this is how things are done. I took the initiative saying, no, this is where I want to go to, and project management at that point in time was not where I wanted to head into. Pride and fear also, we all know that every developer is the best. So I'm the best, and there is nobody that can teach me how to do X, Y, or Z. It's a little bit like driving a car. I'm the only one who can drive a car. Everyone else are just lunatics. So we all know, of course, this is not the case. So asking for help is okay. It's not a sign of weakness, it's actually a strength. And I've seen that people just try to cover up. They say, oh, I have a bug in there. And I know that sometimes this will lead to a problem for the customer, for the user, for whatever, but I'm not going to tell anyone. Because if I'm telling someone, then it will look bad, and I will be the one who's responsible. So just let's try to keep it under the carpet and so on. First of all, it's not going to work. We all know that. We all try to do it. We all experience it. It didn't work. So at some point in time, it's going to come up. And the next thing is that the earlier you're doing this, it's just transparency. If you say, hey, I did a mistake. We have a problem here. And you can act upon it proactively instead of someone else getting there. The worst night that I had was when my boss came up to me saying, oh, there's this computer magazine in Germany, and they're doing an article about security in online shops, and we are one example of how not to do it. And I immediately knew, oh, I knew what was wrong. We fixed it in the meantime, so it wasn't a problem. But we were not as proactive as we should have been. And had it been different, things could have done another way. So I'm just saying, try to lose some of that pride. If it's not working out, say so. Same with we all know the workaholic. Yeah, you think, okay, I have to work. I really have to do this. So 9 to 5 is not working for me, so I'm working from 9 to 9 or to 10 or to 11 or whatever. And a lot of people think they have to do that because everyone else is doing it. And if I'm leaving on time, it will look bad, which is not going to happen. The only thing that happens to you is that you get frustrated, that you get tired, your relationship suffers, whatever. And it's also, statistically, it's the complete wrong thing. Because what happens, I mean, let's say your window where your most performance is 8 hours a day from 9 to 5. So, and you say, okay, but I have to stay 2 hours more so that the team thinks I'm really doing well. But after 8 hours, at least for me, I'm just done. After 8 hours, I start making mistakes. And then I work 2 hours longer, and then I make mistakes in these 2 hours. So the next day, what do I have to do? I have to fix the mistakes that I did the previous day. How long does it take? Maybe 2 hours. So I worked 4 hours for nothing. I worked 2 hours yesterday where I introduced a lot of bugs, and I worked 2 hours today where I fixed those bugs. Had I stopped working yesterday, nothing would have happened. So just make yourself aware of that. If you think, hey, this is not something that can be done right now, I need to rest, I need to recharge my batteries, whatever, then do that. No one will stop you. And actually, what I saw is that most of the people say, oh, hey, he does that, and that's absolutely the right thing, and he still gets his work done. So maybe me doing 10, 11, 12 hours per day is not the right time. So allow for some slack time. This goes back to the hobby part. Allow for you to recharge. Allow for you to do something completely different, because then you may get an idea that you wouldn't get otherwise. When I had my first job, I really tried to get things right. I really tried to do everything. And when a defect came in, I worked as long as this was fixed. And it took hours, hours and hours. And the best ideas that I had was when I said, okay, I can't do this. My Coke bottle is empty, so I have to go grab a new bottle of Coke. And the minute that I stand up, the minute that I focused on something else, I already got the solution. So actively try to do something different. Maybe it's enough to just get up, walk around the office, get back, and you're already there. Or if you say, hey, I really need for a day or whatever to do something completely different, enjoy the weekend. Do something else. Don't think about your work, and you'll see that ideas and inspiration will actually come. And that's especially important if you have stress, especially important in tight situations, because you will always hear saying, yeah, you know, we want you to relax and we want you to enjoy your weekend, but you know, the release is coming up. We really need to do that. And that's fine if it happens once, but there's always a release and there's always something else coming in. So, and we actually do that if we have a real problem in our team, unless the whole world is coming down and nothing's going anymore. We say, okay, this is stress, but let's take an hour off, grab some lunch with everybody, have some fun, then get back. And then there are these situations where you're under pressure from project management, from your colleagues, from whoever, and you feel like, oh, I have to do that. Talk to the people. Experience that I had is especially from project management. They were saying, hey, when are you done? When are you done? We need to deliver this. We need to deliver this. And we thought, we have to do that. But we just talked to the project manager and said, hey, this is not going to work because A, B, and C. And what do you think that he said? He said, oh, that's great that you come to me, that's great that you talk to me. I didn't know that you had a problem. Now that I know that you have a problem, I can talk to the client and we can arrange something else and whatever. So my perception is most of the time the pressure is just perceived. And if you try to actively confront that, sometimes it just goes away. Then there's the real pressure part. I mean, sometimes you have project managers or you have colleagues who are just saying, no, this has to be done. I don't care that you have a family. I don't care that you have to go home. This has to be done, and you're not leaving the office until the defect is solved or whatever. What can they do? Worst thing is they can fire you. But if it's already that bad that they have to threaten you that they will fire you, then you should quit as soon as possible. So bring good arguments. Say, hey, this is not going to work out because A, B, and C. I know that the release is targeted for 1st of December, but it's simply not going to work. So what do you want us to do? No, we have to make the release, and no, we will not do it. Bring good arguments, and most of the time, people will listen. So do not be the lemming, just going down the cliffs with the other guys. And something that a colleague said is don't make all the problems your problems. Especially in IT, we tend to do that. We see something is not working, and I say, oh yeah, I can fix that. I can fix that. And then that is not working. Oh yeah, I can fix that. But then you've set the expectation to someone that you will actually fix it, and they will hold you responsible for actually doing that. So sometimes it's easier just saying, okay, I cannot do anything about this right now. Have someone else do it. Change is the only constant is one of the mottos that I think we hear again and again and again and again. But actually, it's true. So example from myself is that at some point in time, I said, I will never become a manager. I never want to be responsible for a team. This is not something that I can do. I will not do it. But again, change is the only constant. So at some point in time, I said, okay, let's try it, and then you grow into that. And it's not going to go away. So I'm doing this job for 15 years now, and in the beginning I said, okay, I want to see, or I want to experience the perfect project. I want to experience the perfect project where everything is right, where I have great colleagues, great customer, great tools, whatever. Haven't found that, so I thought, okay, so it must be this team. And I changed the team, so it must be the company. So I changed the company, so it must be whatever. Of course, I'm still waiting for the perfect project. I haven't found it. If anyone has, please come up to me and tell me where it is. So what I'm saying is that things will change. Your teams will change. Your company will change. Your objectives will change. Your tools will change, whatever. And you can try saying, oh, no. I'm not adopting that new technology. I'm not adopting that new framework. I will just stay where I am. But it's not going to work out. I've heard being in mobile development until not that long ago that someone said, oh, yeah, that mobile stuff, it will go away. I said, yeah, they can try believing that, but it's not going to work out. So accept it and see, okay, how can I prepare for that? If I know that the framework is not staying forever, if I know that the team is not staying forever, what can I do to actually make life easier? And if I know that the team is going to change, for example, what can I do to make new team members, replacing old team members, coming into the project? How can I make their life easier? How can I ramp them up in the shortest amount of time? What can I make to make their life easier, and so on? So prepare for the change. It will come. If you're prepared, it's going to be a lot easier to handle that. So coming to an end, I think my main motive is find or see the patterns that are there, apply them. We're all used to logical thinking, which we have to. So there is a problem. What solution do I need? Apply it and try seeing this. Try seeing this interperson problems, or that you're not really that happy. Try seeing it as a project. Yeah? Someone gave me the requirement. I want to feel better. So what can I do, and what do I have to do to make it happen? Because in the end, being happy is a choice. Be the optimist, not the pessimist. Sounds crazy, sounds creepy, but that's what I want to give you. Thank you. Any questions?
But I think there is a thing for resources, like for example for career change, or for trying to figure out where your career is going, or where do you want the career to go. Do you have some ideas of where to look at, like, because that's maybe
so it's a combination. So one of the things is just, which takes a little bit longer, is just look a little bit left and right. So there are always opportunity in what you're doing right now. Yeah, just a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. Where can I get there? So then you slowly move there. Talk to your colleagues, talk to other people, saying, okay, what's your story? What did you do? How did you get to where you are right now? Or pick some famous developers. Look at Linus Torvalds or whoever, and you say, okay, what was their journey? Because I don't know where I want to be in five years, and I don't know my perfect job, but I can see, or the only thing that I can do is compare myself to someone else. So what is he doing? Where did he get where he is now? And then try to adapt that to my situation, try to get something out that works for me as well.
Thank you very much for the talk. I actually hope we could have more of these talks at these conferences. I'm a big fan. You said you've been a team lead for some time now. How do you get people in your team, especially developers, to talk about these issues, to talk to each other, and to admit that they fit a certain stereotype, or that they're afraid to admit something?
It's a mixture. So I start in a one-on-one conversation, saying, "Hey, what's your take on our current situation? Are you happy where you are? Is there something that you would like to change? Is there something that you would like to move into?" Then you get into a discussion there, and then sounds silly, but if you see this as a game, and if you make jokes about yourself, for example, the minion stuff. All my colleagues really laughed about, because they know that this is how I behave. I'm a very black and white person. So if something does not work, I'm just standing there, I'm quitting, this is not going to work out. So that's my initial reaction. Then after 5 minutes, I'm getting back to, oh yeah, well, maybe it's something different, and so on. But if you show people that being a stereotype can actually help you. So I mean, there's a reason why a cliche is a cliche, why a stereotype is a stereotype, because it often fits. So and then you see, people suddenly realize, okay, this is nothing that I have to be ashamed of. So I can say, yeah, but I'm an introvert as well, and then you get them into a discussion with them. You say, oh yeah, well, no, you're not, because you can talk here and there. Yeah, you think so, and then you get the dynamic rolling. So that's one advice.
Being a developer, it's quite easy to look at any situations in life or projects or problems that come along and try and break those before they happen, and find the flaws in things. Now, when you start working in a team, there's always the developer that finds the flaws in everything and comes across in a negative light and can really bring the team down sometimes. Is there a way to be more optimistic while still having that personality and attitude? 'Cause sometimes it is needed.
It's difficult, absolutely, but finding examples is one of the things that I experience works. So yes, you have to be like, this is not going to work. So find something small where it actually does work. Saying, okay, you don't think it's going to work, but let's try it. So let's pick this small stuff where it doesn't really matter that much, and let's test it there. And if it works there, then let's apply it to something bigger, 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 and so on. And really often you get these people. It takes a while, but they see, oh yeah, you're right. It worked there and it worked there. So let's try it somewhere else. It's constant work, yes, but you get to there. Okay, then thank you.